About to be spoken. This is the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, episode 5. We are broadcasting from the Blue Chew Studios. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code Hardy at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. I, of course, am Jon Alba, joined every single week by the man of the hour himself, Big Money Matt, Mr. Matt Hardy. How are you, my friend? Things are getting a little wild these days with Andrade and the family office. I don't know, man. Things are a little scary over there.
There's a lot of stuff going on. We're merged and we're a conglomerate working together, the Andrade Hardy family office, and he's looking to book Darby right now and put him under a contract for a wee fee. He hadn't been successful as of yet, but he's going to continue pursuing that issue, and hopefully it works out, because I think Darby is going to make a lot of money going forward. I
saw that, and immediately I said to myself, and have been saying to myself since I first worked with Darby Allin back in 2016, maybe 2017, I said, this guy has Jeff Hardy written all over him. Do you see a similar comparison there?
I very much do, because when it comes to Darby Allin, he doesn't just remind me of Jeff in the ring as far as being fearless and also a guy that just takes all these insane bumps and he seems to continue to get up and keep going. And he has like this, he's almost Teflon. You just can't break this guy. You can't put an end to this guy. He doesn't get hurt. But on top of that factor with Darby Allin, he also reminds me of Jeff outside the ring, because he just really marches to the beat of his own drum. I think if you like Darby, he's cool with that. If you don't like Darby, he's cool with that. He really just doesn't give a shit. He's a very carefree guy, and he very much lives in his own world, and he's not bothered by outside influences. And that reminds me so much of my brother.
Well, we're talking about your brother. I know that the internet would hate me if I didn't ask about this, Matt. Where some reports rumbling this past week that Jeff is a free agent. Middle of March, you guys are returning to action on some indie shows, and then there was some talk about him in the WWE Hall of Fame. They're gonna hate me if I don't ask about it, so I got to ask, Matt, what's the deal? Can you give us any loose lips here?
I certainly can. The rumors are true. They did try and contact Jeff and bring him back to put him underneath some sort of deal, and they were going to induct him into the Hall of Fame. And to me, it seems like they kind of jumped the gun. As I'd said before, they released him before they ever got his drug test results. And they had a little bit of an issue getting the drug test results back. And then finally, my brother and my wife got that. And obviously it was a clean test where he was, totally, when it comes to the drug test, he was totally clean on every level. And they got that back. But they kind of withheld that for a little while, which was very interesting. And I feel like they know they jumped the gun, and they feel like they're going to look bad in this scenario. And I think they did to a degree. But one thing I can say for Jeff is just he has been super positive and super stressless since he's been gone from the WWE. And we are on March 12th and 13th. We're having 2 big matches at the Hardy Boys. Those are our first announced tag team matches. And we have about 10 bookings as the Hardy Boys lined up all together. Some autograph signings, some matches. So just keep a close eye to my social media, Matt Hardy Brand, and the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy Brand podcast, where I will constantly keep all you guys in the loop.
Big Money Matt is no gimmick there, man. You want to bring the Hardy Boys to your indie show? You hit up Matt Hardy. He's got the booking fees for you. He'll let you know, but you better be ready, because the Hardy Boys they're still quite the draw, Matt.
We're a commodity. So if you want to book the Hardy Boys, it is going to be we're going to be getting close to 6 digits. So make sure you have your checkbook ready, and make sure you have your bank account full.
Will Andrade chip in on any of that? Or?
Well, maybe. I mean, he paid me $1.7 million to buy into the HFO and make it the HFO. So, it's pretty good. And I still get my 30% from all my guys.
That's
He's
true.
getting a cut of the money. So it was a good business deal for me. But, Andrade, he's a very savvy businessman. I got to keep a close eye on him.
That's very fair. And a guy that we've learned you have to keep a close eye on, especially in the bathroom, is Michael P.S. Hayes. We got quite a lot of feedback from our episode last week. Overall, people really, really enjoyed it as they got to hear some crazy stories about your run with Michael Hayes. Now that you've had a chance to kind of marinate in it, any thoughts on episode 4 and some of the stuff we talked about on Michael?
Yes. It is better to be pissed off than pissed on. That kind of sums up the Michael Hayes episode. So, yeah, man. I mean, I've got lots of love for Michael Hayes. As I have said many times over, no one in this industry has taught me more than Michael Hayes has. No one has helped me more than Michael Hayes has. So I'll always have great love for him when it comes to that. And he really is. And in many ways, he is myself and my brother's wrestling daddy.
Well, we are not talking about your wrestling daddy this week here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. Instead, we're taking a step far back into time, predating Michael Hayes, into the era of Omega. I've had a feeling that this would be an episode that a lot of people would be interested in, and I'm not surprised to see on social media that they very much are, because if you want to know how Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy came to be, this is going to be the episode for you as we go through your roots in rural North Carolina here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. So without further ado, hit us with that Matt fact.
Matt fact: Matt conceived Omega in an epiphany.
Just got to let it breathe to give you the smile there. And that is going to be part of this origin story here of Omega. I guess we've never really taken a deep dive into what exactly made you want to pursue pro wrestling in the first place. You did say last week that you and Jeff, as kids, wanted to be professional baseball players, and you're playing that in high school. So when do things take a turn and wrestling comes into your periphery?
Yeah, I mean, baseball was our first love. We played t-ball, we played coach pitch, we played little league, all that. And we were very good baseball players. And that was like our love. And we watched baseball on TV, the Atlanta Braves. They were the closest franchise that was the closest to us. So we were big Atlanta Braves fans early on. And we had to go to a few Durham Bulls games when we were very young as well. So like we're big baseball fans, and that was really our passion. And we watched wrestling here and there, but WrestleMania 4, where the Macho Man won the world title, we had a bet, and we both bet one another who we thought was going to win the tournament, because we were like casual fair weather pro wrestling fans at that time. And I bet on the Macho Man because I thought the Macho Man was the coolest, because not only was he this larger than life, over the top personality with this crazy voice. Oh yeah. He also did a flying elbow drop off the top rope. And that was very different than a lot of the other guys back in the day, because that's when it was a big man's world. And you didn't see a lot of high flying, a lot of exciting finishing moves. So Macho Man was my guy. He was truly my guy. And I picked Macho Man to win that, and he did. And then after he won that tournament and we went back and watched the show, like we just fell in love with wrestling. That was the event that totally got us hooked. WrestleMania 4, the WWE World Title Tournament. And from that point on, Jeff and I watched every episode of wrestling that we possibly could, whether it was WWF at the time or NWA. We saw a little bit of World Class. Later ECW showed up, in the Madison Square Garden network. But like Jeff and I had decided, like, these guys are living, breathing superheroes. This is what we want to do. And we decided to pattern everything in our lives to do whatever we had to do to become professional wrestlers.
Was it in that moment that you said baseball's out of the way for us, we're not going to be pro baseball players, like wrestling is the path?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was just really like we're both big comic book fans as well. I actually, one of my famous Matt facts is Matt has a very valuable comic book collection, which is true. And at that point, whenever I loved comic books and superheroes and whatnot, we're like, professional wrestling is the closest you can get to being like a real life superhero, because not only are you this larger than life personality, you're also doing these like superhuman things in a ring, and you're doing them live in front of people. and you don't have a stuntman doing it. So we're like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. We have to do this. And I remember originally, like right from the jump, I remember guys then weighed, they were bigger. I remember Macho Man was 245. That was his weight for a long time. And I was like, I have to be 245, at least 235. And I just remember eating as many like pork and beans as I can. I would just eat cans and cans and cans of pork and beans because I had to gain weight. I had to get bigger. I had to get thicker. I had to get more size on me, and I was poor obviously at that time. And I was eating pork and beans like crazy.
Definitely not the best idea to be around the Hardy Boys at that point after all that. Out of curiosity, because, I'm a huge baseball guy myself. Yes. Jeff strikes me as a either shortstop outfielder combo. And you probably, I could see you being third base outfield combo. Am I on there or no?
Wow, you're pretty good. Okay, you're pretty good. I pitched some. Jeff was a shortstop the majority of the time, and I also played third base as well. Yeah, which is, you were very much on the money there. But I would pitch, and I played third base, and Jeff was primarily a shortstop. Sometimes he'd play second.
Yeah. Jeff is a shortstop, just the acrobatic nature of it, the range. That seems like that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah. And center field is the shortstop of the outfield. So that's why I was thinking maybe there. So that's pretty cool. Just a little tidbit there. And
it's one thing we dipped in all those positions a little bit. We tried different things, but like in the big scheme of things, I ended up being a third baseman. Jeff was a shortstop, and you nailed it. And then I also pitched as well.
You see that any of the House Hardy playing baseball down the line?
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, they're all pretty athletic, and maybe that is even by design, because I kind of push them into doing things that's going to keep them athletic and be in shape. So it's a possibility. Who knows? I think they're all going to be very athletic.
Well, you can push them towards baseball, or you can push them towards trampoline wrestling, because this is something that anyone who's followed the careers of the Hardys know. There's the videotapes out there. You guys, as kids, start the Trampoline Wrestling Federation, and you're more or less just copying things that you see on TV. And I know I'm not alone in identifying this. If you were a kid in the 90s, wrestling was so hot. If you had access to a trampoline, this is what you were doing. Everyone was doing this. I had this in my neighborhood. Everyone did. What do you remember about getting that started, and how did you feel when you were mimicking these larger than life comic book characters?
Well, I remember we begged our dad for about a year to get a trampoline. And if we could get a trampoline, we knew we'd be set, because if we're going to get a trampoline, we're going to get on here, we're going to practice all these moves. We're going to master all the pro wrestling moves that we saw on TV. We're going to emulate everything. And we get a ring, and we would save up money. And for $20, we could rent a video camera. And it's not like the small video cameras. It was the old school big video cameras that took a VHS tape. And we would wrestle against one another. And we would like write down and like orchestrate these long matches with all these spots in it. And we would film it just on a trampoline. And then once we did that a couple of times, we're like, hold up, we need to like up the ante. Let's go in the forest. Let's cut down some trees, and we'll put them in the ground around trampoline, and we'll actually get garden hose, we'll run cable through it, and we'll build an actual ring. And we did that. And then we said, okay, let's up the ante more. If we really want to make this look good while we're filming stuff with this camcorder, we need to have like a stadium, an arena. And our dad, he was a tobacco farmer, and whenever he would take his dried out tobacco to the market, he would always cover it with these plastic sheets. So we cut down trees from the forest, and we dug holes in the ground, and we put up these big ass poles, and we would nail these sheets of plastic all around, and we painted stuff up with spray paint, where we had like, Trampoline Wrestling Federation, Wolverine, which was Jeff's name, High Voltage, which was my name, all the stars' names. And we built like an arena, and we filmed these videos. We actually did so many of these videos, and we had so much content. We would both wear masks. We did 6 or 7 different gimmicks. Either we would wrestle one another. We had a couple of the friends we met that came and would partake in the silliness with us. We actually put together, I cut one with 2 VCRs, a best of tape, and we made a tape, and we replicated it over and over, and we sold it to local video stores as well, and had it in there being rented out for the longest time, which was something we were very proud of that time. Like, we had our wrestling in our backyard, the TWF, in some local video stores around the area.
This episode of The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy is very much going to be a love letter to local community pro wrestling.
for sure.
When I was starting my on-air career, I was in small market Bangor, Maine, and I'm reading our notes for this show, and I'm like, man, I have experienced these things. I have felt these things because there's a certain charm to that small town. What's the right word? The ownership that they take in having mom pop promotions or organizations like this. What was the reception from your friends and some of the members in the local community to seeing this stuff?
There were a lot of people that thought it was cool. They thought they thought we were crazy that we were doing this in some ways, but they also thought we were like, cool, you're trying to chase a dream. That's just pretty cool that you're doing that. There were some people that laughed at us. And like later on down the road, once we made it, I remember like we had some great apologies following that as well. But what started is a guy who is 6 years older than me, who actually went to school in Cameron Elementary. And that's where I went to elementary school at. His name was Tracy Cadell. And he is the father of Trevor Cadell, which is Cameron Grimes, if some of you don't know that. And he actually was like in the 7th or 8th grade when I was in, probably second or third. And there was a point where the bus that we both rode on, we were on the same road and we would get picked up together. It actually got into an accident, a crash, and he helped me get off the bus. And I knew him because he only lived like a mile and a half away from me on the road. He actually came by my house. He said, hey, I heard you guys built a ring out here. And like, you guys are like wrestling in your backyard. Like, I've always wanted to be a wrestler. Like, have you guys ever thought about doing shows somewhere or whatever? And we're like, no, not really. We're just kind of like kids. We're just doing this right now. And we're trying to like teach ourselves how to do this and train ourselves, so to say. And he said, well, if you ever, want to try and do something more, let me know. And then he actually came by and he like worked out some on a trampoline, which was so crazy. We were teenagers. He was, 20 years old, whatever at this time, 21. And he just loved wrestling so much. So obviously, whenever we first got together to build a promotion, myself and Tracy were the guys kind of like leading the charge for it. And we were contacted by a guy named Kenneth Morgan, who's just like someone who was a fair carny. If you've ever been to a local county fair or state fair, someone who like sets up a ride or works a ride, breaks it down, works with the fair. He's a traveling vagabond, That's exactly what Kenneth Morgan was. And he reached out to us and said, hey, come to my house. I remember Tracy drove me. I didn't have a license at that point, I don't think. And then he drove me to Kenneth Morgan's house and he showed us this 20 by 20 ring he had, which had a trampoline in the very middle of it. And the rest of the ring, we took some falls on it. It felt like concrete. I mean, there was like no give on it. It was like a concrete ring with a trampoline in the center. And then he said, hey, I have a deal where we can do some fair shows. Would you guys like to come wrestle for me? And we said, you know what, man, we'll give it a shot. Why wouldn't we? So the very first show that we ever did, it was myself. It was my brother, Jeff. It was Tracy Cadell. It was Marty Garner. And then there were two other guys that were Tracy's friends. And we did a show with 6 people. And that was in October of 1992. And the very first match, and this kind of becomes a theme as time goes on, was the Hill, High Voltage, who very much mimicked the Fabulous Freebirds, the Michael Hayes, Jimmy Garvin renditions, versus Wolverine, which was Jeff Hardy and very much mimicked Sting at the time. We were the opening match, and there was about 350 people out there. And to hear those oohs and the ahs and the cheers and the boos, we were hooked right from the jump. That was our first time in front of a live crowd. And we knew more than ever at that juncture that we wanted to be professional wrestlers and make a career out of this.
So, context here.
Yes.
How old are both of you guys? 18, 16, 18, like around that area?
Yeah. If you go back to this, we were probably 16 and 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
16,
I was 16, 14. Yeah.
Completely self-trained. You have
completely self-trained.
No professional training at all. You are
no professional training.
What you have
never been in a full-fledged, legit pro wrestling ring before at this time. On a trampoline, messed around outside, and then we've been in this hybrid, half concrete ring, half trampoline.
What is the local wrestling scene like? Is a fair show pretty much your only opportunity to see pro wrestling in the local sphere, unless like WCW or WWE is in town or near town, I should say?
Yeah, there were a few independents that came through. I remember there was an independent that came through at one point, which Ken Shamrock was on. I want to say maybe the Pitbulls were on, and this was like, early 90s once again, maybe 91, 92, something like that, right before we did the show. But as far as the fair would go, there wasn't any kind of promotion in our area that ran regularly. So that is the reason, like, I feel like we accepted Ken's offer. Like, okay, well, there's no wrestling here. Maybe we could make wrestling be a thing here. Maybe we could make wrestling like, something that people would come out and watch and do. And after we had a few shows with Kenneth and we did a few of these fair shows, we actually booked the Southern Pines National Guard Armory, which ended up being our venue, when it was all said and done. As far as Omega goes, that was the ECW arena, or the Madison Square Garden for Omega, the Southern Pines National Guard Armory. We did one show there, which was pretty good. It was pretty attended because we promoted it real hard, that we did in the hybrid, concrete ring and trampoline ring. And that was a lot of fun. That was a long ass work day for sure. Just putting that, taking the ring, putting it in. When we do these fair shows, we'd usually have a couple nights, maybe 2 or 3 nights that we could do, and we could leave the ring set up. But just to take the ring in on a certain day at a certain time and then have to have it out that night, it was very demanding. So after that point, we realized like we weren't going to make a lot of money from this. And that really wasn't myself and Tracy and my brother so much. It was Kenneth Morgan more than anyone. He was the guy promoting these shows, but he's like, well, these aren't going to make a lot of money. So I don't know if it is worth my time to do it, because he's looking for a payday at this point. And we're very passionate about what we're doing. So we end up buying the ring from him, and we're going to convert it into a full-fledged regular pro wrestling ring. And that is kind of where ECWF, the East Coast Wrestling Federation, which is the first generation of Omega, that's where it came to be.
Well, let's talk about ECWF. And also, I just want to say this too, like, opening match, you versus Jeff Hardy in 1992, 16 and 14 years old. What a fever dream, right? Like, imagine if you were one of those 300 plus people that were in attendance for that match, having no clue what you were witnessing is unreal, literally unreal. I remember being at a Middlesex County Fair show in New Jersey back in like 2014, 2013, and seeing this young kid named Joey Janela. And it's just funny how this stuff happens at these fair shows, man. You're right. There's a charm. So 1993 rolls around, ECWF, the East Coast Wrestling Federation. Now, this is something that you and Tracy go in on together officially here. You guys are partners.
Yes.
How central of a character would you say Tracy is to your wrestling journey and Jeff's wrestling journey?
So without Tracy and without his regular job, and also just he had the ability to like go out and do stuff constantly. Like, he would make all the tickets. I would put together a flyer. He would go get all these things printed up. I mean, he was very important, man. He was a very central part of the nucleus of the beginning of Omega, which was the ECWF. And man, we planned so hard for this first show forever. And I just thinking back, like, we put so much time and effort into it. And it was literally me and Tracy, and Tracy did most of the legwork as far as like booking the building and like making sure there's going to be someone there to sell concessions. He's going to make sure the tickets are there. The pre-sales, we went around and got sponsors. We would, like, even me at that point, I would, dress up with some nice pants and a nice shirt and maybe even throw on a tie. And then we would go business to business looking for sponsors, and if you would sponsor our thing, we'd give you X amount of tickets. We'd promote you in the program. We'd do whatever. And that was our goal, was to make sure to pay for the venue and all our expenses through the sponsors. And we did that the majority of the time, but man, it was hard work. And I'll tell you what, if you ever want to get if you ever want to take a hit in like confidence, try going into some business that wants nothing to do with pro wrestling and ask them to sponsor your event and see what they think about it, especially when you're a 16 or 17-year-old kid. It was a couple of those times whenever we got rejected and told no, they were pretty hard to swallow, but it also helps build you up into a man and helps give you a little confidence to do things you're afraid of doing. So anyway, long story short, this deal with Tracy, we worked really hard. We got this event. This event happened, and this was like going to be our breakthrough event, the first ever ECWF event. And once again, the first match, the opening match, was myself versus Jeff. And it was a little different because now I was a heel as High Voltage, and Jeff was wrestling as Will-O-the-Wisp. So that is how we were kicking things off. No, I take that back. I am wrong. He was not in this one. It was the very first match was myself versus High Voltage. Here you go. We'll back this up. So the very first ECWF show happened, and a reoccurring theme. The very first match was myself versus Jeff, and it was me, High Voltage, the heel, the bad guy, against my brother Jeff Hardy as Wolverine, as the babyface. And we wanted to kick off the show in a great light and give them an amazing match to begin with. And whenever Jeff came out and wrestled, he did his entrance. He was in the ring. I came out. I was wearing these shades, and I was literally so stressed out because I had booked all the talent, which were like our friends, our local friends. I'd booked all the talent. I had wrote the card. I had done the angles. I was making sure to take care of everyone's pay. I had so many responsibilities going on. I was so stressed out, and I ran around all day. It took us forever to set up the ring because the ring was in a million different pieces. It wasn't convenient at all. The ring took like 7 hours to set up that day. It was insane. And I had never eaten throughout the course of the day. And finally, I got to eat a Subway sandwich. And as I was eating it, this is like 45 minutes before bell time, I threw up all over the place, just between being sick and just the stress and everything else. And then when it came down to do our entrance, Jeff does his entrance. He's in the ring. People are like, yay, this is a cool looking guy. He's got a nice face paint. I come out. I'm going to hill it up real big. We had just got these mats from Union Ponds High School, where we went to high school at. They were going to throw them out, and we took them. And they were the big, thick mats that were like 4 inches thick.
They're not comfortable at all.
Not comfortable. They were very hard as well. But I remember coming out, and I was doing almost like the Freebirds. I was going, yeah, 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 yeah. And I have these shades on. It's dark. There were no lights by the ring, and I eat it. I trip over the mat right on my face. Boom. And then I get up. I'm already sick. I feel like absolute shit. And I remember getting up, and I was like so embarrassed. And I just grabbed a sign that said like, you suck or something, and tore it up and tried to like get my heat back and feel cool. And then I got in the ring. I remember looking in the ring, and Jeff was going like laughing at me. So that was a pretty tough moment. We got in the ring, and we had our first match, and we killed it. We had a great match. And Ted Hobgood, who would later become our ring announcer and commentator, Scott Sullivan is the name he went under, the AKA. He actually watched this first match, and he wasn't expecting much, but he was blown away with what he ultimately ended up seeing that night.
That's going to be a theme of this episode too, is you're seeing a lot of these matches and they seem remedial. They're small town, they're local, but there's something different about them. There's something that is catching people's eyes, and it's creating fire. I'll tell you what, I didn't realize that bodily functions were going to be such a reoccurring theme here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. But the last few weeks, we've had a few of those stories. I'm glad to hear that you were able to get through the match. Do you consider that to be like your first, like, real big time pro wrestling match once you're in that organized promotion there?
Yeah, I mean, especially with all this stress going on, and like you said, yes, it's a reoccurring theme. There's been a lot of urination and regurgitation here at the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, it seems like. But yeah, it was a very, very stressful moment. And it did feel like my first real big time pro wrestling match, because too, I was doing double duty that night. Besides having that match, I would go into the main event and wrestle against Sub-Zero, who would later be known as Champagne, which was Marty Garner, who's a very famous guy who was like probably the one that didn't make it. We had 11 guys that ended up signing contracts. We had 12 guys that appeared on, national TV or big promotion TV. Marty was the only guy that didn't sign a contract.
Yeah.
He appeared for ECW, but never signed an official deal. But he was always one of our guys from day one. He was an Omega OG, an Omega original. So that night, whenever I wrestled Marty, I know Ted Hobgood had told me time and time again, like, you did a 450 and it blew me away. And there were things that Jeff did as well. I mean, we were doing any move you could imagine. We were doing in that juncture. We were doing 450 splashes. We were doing shooting star presses. I mean, any move that was happening in pro wrestling at that time, we were able to do it at Omega. And we had a lot of talent that were really athletic and also young and hungry. And my mentality right from the jump was, I would tell everybody, like, if you can go out there and steal the show, go do it. I know typically in pro wrestling, they wanted to build a show like the first match is very basic. It stays in the ring. They don't go out of the ring. I said, to hell with all that. I said, if you can steal the show, I want you to steal it. Give everybody a main event. That was my mentality.
We had a chance to talk to Ted in our research for this episode, and he passed along some of his recollections. And talking about that first match, I just want to read this to the audience because there's excellent imagery here used by Ted. He says, quote, "It all started at the Southern Pines National Guard Armory with ECWF, of course. The ring, since it used to be a trampoline ring, was sagging in the middle. And with that blue tarp as a canvas, it looked like a swimming pool. And if memory serves, the first match was High Voltage versus Will-O-the-Wisp. Willow came out first wearing sneakers and a ski mask and didn't promise to be a very good show. Then Voltage comes out and trips over the floor mats. This is definitely going to be a pitiful show. But then, of course, we see Matt Hardy wrestling Jeff Hardy, and it's amazing. You, referring to you, Matt Hardy, even hit the 450. And as I always tell everybody, there were only two people in the world doing the 450, Two Cold Scorpio and Hayabusa. And here's a kid in rural North Kakalaki delivering it beautifully. There's a charm there, Matt. There's something unique and endearing about that. Did you have any perception that the audience was receiving it in a similar way to Ted did there?
The audience enjoyed themselves. I mean, we put on a hell of a show, no doubt about it. I mean, we were, we may have been guilty of being untrained professional wrestling mud show athletes at that juncture, but like we were very passionate about what we were doing, and we had watched a lot of wrestling, and we knew what was exciting to us, and that's what we wanted to emulate in the ring. The things that were exciting to us, we want to have a whole show of that, a whole show of excitement. And the people really liked it. And the thing that was so cool about it is that we built up a great audience as time went on, especially in the Southern Pines area at the Southern Pine National Guard Armory.
So you keep building a little bit of momentum here. You're bringing in some names. You mentioned Marty before. Any other names come to mind at this time that are joining your crew?
Yeah, I mean, like our core group crew was, Matt Hardy, Jeff Hardy, Shannon Moore, who was a couple years younger than Jeff. He became a regular. Jason Arndt, who was wrestling as Venom, who would later go on to be known as Joy Abs. He was one of our regular guys, and he was just insanely talented. He was like so strong, so athletic. He could do a standing backflip. He was so talented, so strong as well. And he was a great addition to Omega. We had met a guy at that time too. Tracy did Tracy's job was he was a person who drove around a Coke truck and he filled the Coke vending machines. So on his route, he actually met Eddie Rainwater, who was a known professional wrestler. And that was a big deal for us, Tracy meeting this guy, because it opened up doors, which allowed us to start networking and meet other guys. Eddie Rainwater was an old school professional wrestler, kind of a weekend warrior, wasn't built, wasn't in great shape. He also brought in another wrestler named John Savage, who was a great heel. And we learned a lot from him, especially from a psychological standpoint. He had great psychology. He was a great heel as well. Those guys were working with us. And we had other guys we were adding here and there. Like later on, we would add more guys, but we had a very core, solid group. We also met Caprice Coleman around this time. A lot of people probably know him from Ring of Honor. He was a commentator there and also wrestled as well. We were the first guys to meet him, and he actually was a product of the ECWF, New Frontier Wrestling Alliance training school. He was one of the first people that graduated from our training school.
You mentioned Shannon Moore. That's a name that we're going to talk about later this year on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. We got an episode planned on him, but if I'm not mistaken, he was involved with your Trampoline Wrestling Federation as well. And he was like 8-9 years old, and you guys are like doing suplexes on him and knocking the wind out of him. And he eventually becomes the cameraman, right?
Yeah, that's what he did initially when he first started. Whenever we were doing the trampoline wrestling shows, he was our cameraman, and that was kind of his gig. Like that's how he was paying his dues. Amazing. And we were hoping to get some more size on him. Just he was so small and so young, and he was friends with my brother. And like the very first time I met him, we were in a trampoline ring, and I went to superplex him off the top and actually dropped him down, and he did like a slingshot suplex off the pole back into the ring. Probably bruised his ribs really bad. Like it's child abuse. Jeff was very mad at me, I know, but Shannon had been there from day one as well, and he kind of paid his dues. And then once he got in the ring, he obviously, as we all know, became a pretty well-known wrestling superstar.
No good Carney, son of a bitch, piece of shit asshole, Matt Hardy. Back
That's
at
me.
it again.
I was getting a wee fee from all these guys. Then maybe I was just paying the fee.
That's fair. That's fair. So I think what's important to note here is that, and you kind of alluded to it before, you're basically doing all of the creative and booking for this stuff at this time, and you're 19, 20 years old, right? I mean, things are picking up fast for you here from a creative standpoint, and you're forced to step into a role that, man, I don't think any other 19, 20-year-olds really ever find themselves in. What did that do for you in terms of helping grow your wrestling mind?
I think it really pushed me to be creative. It also pushed me to be a better business person as far as like dealing with people from like a talent relations standpoint, or trying to like sell people on doing specific stuff at a show. I think I gained a lot of experience doing that. And when I talked about the whole Eddie Rainwater, John Savage deal, they actually were the first person that connected me with the Italian Stallion and George South. And I actually went out there and did a show for them. I did one match, and they put me in against the guy that was like their enforcer in their promotion. And he really beat the shit out of me. I went out, I did a 450, I did a springboard moonsault. I did a lot of cool moves. And then Italian Stallion, who was the inspiration for Big Money Matt, obviously, he did the big sell on me. He's like, well, you're a really athletic kid, but you need to be trained. If you pay me $3,000, I can train you, and then you can be a professional wrestler. Like, dude, like, I don't have any money. I'm like a broke teenager, like I rake pine straw. I sell pine straw. I've taught myself how to sew. I'm making some gear, and I sell sponsorships to try and promote shows, so I don't have any money. So thanks, but no thanks. But later he contacted me back, and that's how we first got our foot into doing WWE extra work. But anyway, the thing I was going to say about Omega, the thing that I learned is like there wasn't a ton of places around for us to work that we were really invited to at that point, considering we weren't trained, we didn't have any kind of great resume. So I figured the more shows I could run, it would give us all more of a chance to season ourselves and also get experience. And that was kind of the whole goal behind it. One of the things that slowed us down was just finances, because once again, I was a broke kid. Tracy was a young man who didn't have a lot of money. He didn't have like a great job or anything. And we actually met a guy named Gents Lutz. And this guy ran a video store, and he was one of our regular sponsors. And upon doing more research into Gents, he had told us that he always had a dream of being a professional wrestler. And he said, what if I invested in your shows? And he had an extra building. He ran a video store in Carthage, North Carolina. He said, I have an empty building here beside us. You wouldn't have to store your ring outside anymore. You could store it in my building and leave it here, and you could bring the guys in. You have a nice warm place. You guys could work out and train and whatnot. So it sounded like a pretty good deal. And he was going to like upgrade the ring, and he was going to make sure to pay like these building fees and whatnot. And it like, okay, well, maybe this is the next step in doing things. So we decided at that point, we took up Gents on his offer, and we changed the name of the promotion to New Frontier Wrestling Association, which was NFWA.
And then things don't quite go as planned. It's easy when you're so desperate to find success. You want so badly to find a gateway to achieve your dreams that when someone like him comes along, especially as young as you were, you're willing to do whatever it takes to make that all happen. But then there are some warning signs, Matt. What goes down?
Well, we started doing shows. We continued doing our, same venues. We were doing Southern Pines. We were doing Sanford.
Same crew of people, generally speaking, right?
Yeah, it's the same crew of people, but now you have Gents who is actually putting money into this project, and he's a guy who's a businessman. He'd been around for a while. He'd made money. He ran a couple of video stores, and he's investing money. But once again, almost very similar to Kenneth, he wasn't seeing a return on this money. So then that became an issue with him. And then once he realized, like, this is kind of like something I'm investing all this money into, even though he was getting to put on a mask and he would wrestle. So he was living out one of his fantasies, to us, we were just like passionate about this. And like, it was a chance for us to like, own our craft. And it was the chance for us to gain experience and get more ring time. And that's all we were really looking for at this point. It wasn't about the money. It was about, improving and enhancing our talents. So then I got to the point where about a year after working with gents, he said, well, I'm not going to be able to do this anymore, guys. I can't invest in this and I can't do this, but I do have your ring in my venue, and I want to be paid back for the money I spent. So he demanded $1,200, or he was going to hold our ring hostage. We weren't going to get out of our venue. So that became a huge ordeal. And myself and Tracy and my brother and a couple other guys, we all, came together and tried to do extra work and extra jobs. And we all raised this money so that we could get our ring back as he held it hostage. And then obviously he was out, and we decided we just wanted a different start, because that NFWA now had left a bad taste in our mouth.
Right.
And right around the same time, we had started working for other independent promotions, one of them being ACW. And in ACW, they had television here in the Middle Atlantic area. They had pretty decent TV on local cable access channels here in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia. And we started doing some shows for these guys. And they had a little network of people that were like the investors for their shows. And Thomas Simpson, a gentleman named Thomas Simpson, was working for those guys. And anytime we'd work, because we worked this super athletic style with all these high spots and these cool moves, moonsaults and 450s and dives and topes. And this was what Thomas was all about. He would always give us extra when we did the ACW stuff. But it turns out the big boss there, Mitch Gowd, he said, well, I know you guys have your own promotion that you do Omega, but you're going to WWE and you're doing on their TV. And even though his TV wasn't shit in the big scheme of things, he said, well, if you're going to do jobs on Vince's TV, then damn it, you're going to have to do jobs on my TV as well. And we're like, well, it's quite a big difference. He's actually paying us big money, hundreds of dollars at a time whenever we do it. And you're not. So if you want us to just do jobs on your TV, then we'll just, we'll leave. There's other places we can work, and we're starting to be in demand, and we're starting to build a little bit of a name because people are seeing us on WWE TV from doing extra work. And then I remember telling Thomas that our core group that did all the ACW shows was myself, my brother Jeff, Jason Arndt Venom, Marty Garner Champagne, and Shannon Moore. So we said, if one of us goes, we all go. You lose all five of us. And as Thomas said, they called them the Southern Pines Crew. When the Southern Pines Crew walked, Thomas decided to walk as well. And he was willing to come work with us.
Yeah. So there's a lot to digest there. I
Yes.
want to break that down a little more, though. So there feels like there's a juxtaposition here between Thomas is a really integral part of this story, and we're going to get into him in a second. But going back to your failures just prior to this with the promotion closing and whatnot, I feel like this is a good lesson that can be learned, because there are a lot of small town promoters out there who are enamored with the idea of running a wrestling company and getting to hold the pen and being, I booked this shit, I booked that shit, this is my champion, my company, but they don't realize the hardships and the financial struggles that you may encounter. What's your piece of advice that you would give to anyone who's maybe looking to buy into a promotion or invest in a promotion or start a promotion, that have those big-eyed dreams of, I can book a promotion one day?
I think if you're looking to invest in a promotion or get involved in a promotion, the first thing you have to realize is that you need to do it because you love pro wrestling and you're passionate about it. You don't need to do it as a business investment to make money, because you're not going to. It's not a money-making thing, especially on the very lower level. If you're going to invest into something, do it because you love it. You love the art of pro wrestling. You want to be a booker, or you want to be a performer, or you want to, do whatever act you're going to do. But if you think you're going to invest into it and it's going to be something that's going to turn around a huge profit in a short amount of time, it's not. It's going to be a very slow growing process, which you are going to feed money into, but it allows you to live out your dreams of being a pro wrestler or a pro wrestler booker. That would be my advice. And don't do it for the money. Do it for the passion.
And passion is the word. Passion is the underlying theme of what would ultimately become Omega. It's the name of the DVD, Omega Uncommon Passion, right, that iSpots put together. And that's where I get my first visual introduction to your boy here, Thomas, and he is a character and a half. And I get a chance to watch some of these interviews with him, and he comes across very genuinely endearing and genuinely invested in helping make something here. And it seems to be where your little crew here is also the Southern Pines crew. You are invested in making something of yourselves. What was your first impressions of Thomas, and when did you realize, okay, he's someone that we could potentially go into business with here?
I mean, my first impressions of Thomas were that when we worked with ACW and we first met him, he was always super complimentary of what we were doing, which was very nice. He seemed to give us more respect than a lot of other people in pro wrestling did that we had met so far, which was nice. And then he would always bonus us, which was a big deal. You know, I feel like when we were there, if we would get $30 maybe, but like Thomas would always slide like 20 more bucks in, you know, in our envelope, you know, or give us it on the down low because
it's a
he loved
huge deal.
what we were doing. It is a huge deal when you're getting those kind of bonuses. And he knew, you know, that was going to win us over. And Thomas was just like he's a very sweet Southern belle in many, many ways, you know, just like he has the accent. He has kind of like that dialect. He has that kind of charm to him in so many ways. But Thomas always seemed like someone who would be up for like trying. And he also had money which he could spend, and he knew he wasn't going to make $1 million automatically. He was willing to invest in something he thought he was going to enjoy because he was passionate about pro wrestling. And I think we both understood that we both had great passion as far as like making a great wrestling product. And that's why, you know, myself and Thomas, we were such a great mutual admiration society for one another.
And he was certainly invested in making something actually happen here. So you guys say you're done with ACW. You want nothing to do with that. And if one goes, you all go. So you all go.
Right.
So Thomas meets with you guys at his parents' house in South Carolina the following week. And he says that you propose to start a promotion together. Do you have any memories of this?
Yeah. I remember we said, you know, we've got a group here. You know, we got our ring back. It's an old ring. It's beat up. It was the initial ring that we were using, you know, from Kenneth Morgan that we had converted over. And now, you know, we lost it for a little while, and we lost a lot of time in doing shows whenever we had to raise, you know, this fee after our ring was taken hostage by Gents. Yeah, a wee fee. Gents got us. Gents was also a good big money mat inspiration, I guess. But, you know, we had lost a little time doing shows, and we said, you know, I really feel like we kind of need a fresh start in some ways. I think as a name, we'll start new. I said, I'll work on that. And then like Thomas offered to like buy a new ring, and he was also going to get guardrails, and he was going to get a couple other things. It was like pretty mandatory things for actually having a legitimate wrestling promotion. And once Thomas invested in us, and everybody got along great with him. I mean, he was a real sweetheart, you know, all across the board is a real sweetheart. And he got along with everybody really well. And he knew there was a lot of potential here. And we all did. We knew there was a potential. We just needed an opportunity because once again, we had no one who had a lot of money. We were all literally broke teenagers at that point, you know, guys who were like in school, you know, who maybe had part-time jobs, whatever. The guy who had the most money of all of us was Jason Arndt Venom, because he drove a wrecker for his dad's business at that point. And he made pretty decent money, you know, and that was his gig. So like Thomas was willing to invest in us, and he knew we had a lot of talent and we could do a lot of things. And he trusted my mindset. He seemed to be a big fan of like my booking and my creative aspects and whatnot. So Thomas went for it, and we ended up putting together a deal, and we started running Omega.
You said that you saw the potential. When you say potential, what do you mean by that? Potential to become a massively successful promotion, potential to be a place for guys to learn how to work. What are you referring to there?
Great. Yeah, I think whenever we say potential, we did think we had potential to be a promotion that could do great shows and that could actually be a haven for like creating new guys who can go on to be big stars in the industry. And on top of that, we thought like with the right amount of time and with the right execution, we could like start running shows all around the North Carolina, South Carolina area, and we could draw well, and we could like, make some decent money out of it. I think that's what we thought when we said potential. But more importantly, I think we realized we had enough talent and we were knowledgeable enough now, and we started making a bit of a name for ourselves. We thought we could make an impact in pro wrestling.
So we're talking 1997 here, and you've had your own personal renaissance a little bit. The High Voltage name is no more because WCW. Can you confirm this story here that some of those tapes that you sent in somehow ended up in the WCW power plant? Chris Kanyon allegedly reveals to you that WCW directly jacked the High Voltage name from this, and as a result, you become Surge. Is that fact, or is that a Matt fact, or is that Matt fiction?
That is a fact. It is a Matt fact. Yes. I had sent in my WCW amateur challenge. Once again, we were, trying every avenue to make it, because our dreams, myself and my brother, and for what it's worth, Jason, Marty, and Shannon Moore, all of our dreams were to make livings as a professional wrestler. So we were trying every avenue possible. I sent in my tape of High Voltage, the amateur challenge. And then also, in addition to that, we had sent several audition tapes. I'd given stuff to WWF at the time. I'd given stuff to WCW, NWA. And I know Chris Kanyon told me in the power plant, they had just this massive library of tapes that people had sent them. And there were guys like Chris Kanyon who would look through these things and watch them. And they had saw my name on this WCW amateur challenge. And they'd also saw some of our work. They were familiar with like High Voltage and Will of the Wisp in some of our matches, even from indies and whatnot.
Insane.
And he said, "Oh, this High Voltage, this is his name." And I guess they probably checked. "Oh, it's not copyrighted. It's not trademarked. No, it's going to be ours." So I remember that being so bummed out. And then it was great to hear that they officially got it from, my tape and from my character at that time and utilized it or whatever. So yeah, I thought too, like if there's another big act known as High Voltage, I need to do something different, because once something is on TV, you kind of have the rights to it, whether you do or not. It's like, it's yours then, and they were on a big TV program. So they owned High Voltage at that point. So I said, I need to be something different. And I ended up inheriting the name Surge.
Was there ever thought, this is a total sidetrack, but like, as you tell me this story here, so WCW puts the High Voltage name into motion. WWE eventually buys the tape library and the intellectual properties. Was there ever a thought that crossed your mind that you could once again become High Voltage in WWE at any point and bring that character back in some weird parallel universe?
Actually, no, I've never thought about that until right now, but that's a hell of a point. I guess in theory, now that we have bought the WCW, the WWE had bought the WCW library, it could have happened if I had desired it.
The Woken character could have lent itself to you being High Voltage, the Lake of Reincarnation. Man, Matt, it could have happened. Yeah,
there you have it. I was slipping. I guess I was just too focused on my damn government name of Matt Hardy.
Man. Anyway, just a thought. So your Surge now, 1997's rolled around. You've decided you're going to have this promotion here. You don't know a name, but then as we learned in this Matt fact in episode 5 of The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, you have an epiphany one night.
Yes.
What happens?
Yeah, I after meeting with Thomas, and once we kind of had the handshake deal, we agreed we were going to have a promotion, and we want to come up with a different creative name. And I remember trying to do everything I could to avoid having the name Federation in it, or Alliance, or Association. I wanted something to be very drastically different, something new and creative, something that would have been, real peak 1997 at the time, I guess. And I actually was dreaming. I remember the moon, like I was kind of going in and out of sleep. I was very tired. I remember looking at the moon, and all of a sudden something just came to me, which really did feel like an epiphany. And it was part of the inspiration for the whole Broken Matt Hardy premonitions as well. But in that moment, as I was like kind of closing my eyes, dozing off and waking up, and I thought organization of modern. And then I remember thinking extreme was like, ECW was called Extreme Championship Wrestling. I was like, what could it be, as opposed to like a promotion or, fighting or federation? And then I said, well, what if it's like grappling arts, because you're grappling, wrestling is grappling. And all these elements kind of came to me at one time. And I was like, hold up, wait, I can get Omega out of that. And Omega is like the last, the final, the ultimate. And I said, if it's Omega, it could be the Organization of Modern Extreme Grappling Arts. And I remember thinking, I like put myself over huge. I was like, that's some badass shit, man. Like I just came up with some badass shit. The Organization of Modern Extreme Grappling Arts. That was some like Einstein level shit, man. I was a genius in that moment, but it really did. It kind of came to me in a weird, like epiphany feeling like deal.
Is that where the Team Extreme name comes from too?
No, it isn't.
Coincidental.
Yeah, it's totally coincidental. Yeah.
Interesting. So what's the reception to the name amongst the crew?
Everybody loved it, or at least maybe they thought because I was the booker, they put me over enough to act like they loved it. But yeah, it was pretty well received. And one thing that was cool about, we were just starting to do Omega shows. We had just met the Hurricane, Shane Helms, and his partner at that time, Mike Maverick, and we had just really formed a bond with these guys. And I remember after they checked out, our work. We met them on another independent show, and they checked out our work, and they're like, wow, these are some guys that are like us. They're like young and they're hungry, and they really, they have a high work rate and they're busting their ass. And that's exactly what we thought of those guys as well. So they were coming to the very first Omega show we were ever going to have in Sanford, North Carolina, the way it worked out. So we were very excited to book them, Mike Maverick and Shane Helms, who everyone knows from becoming famous as the Hurricane. They were going to be a very integral part of our crew and a very special part of our crew as well. So our first ever Omega show was slated to be in Sanford, North Carolina. And these guys were there. And a very funny story about Shane Helms and Mike Maverick.
And they're known as the Serial Thrillers, correct? That is their tag team name? Just need to get that out there. Okay.
Yep. They became known the Serial Thrillers shortly thereafter. I don't even know if they'd started until they started Omega. But shortly thereafter, they were known as the Serial Thrillers. So they had a show. This was on a Saturday that we were having the first official Omega branded show, which was, my promotion that I was booking. So the night before, they were on a Friday night show somewhere, and they went to eat something at a restaurant afterwards. And Manny Fernandez had been on their show with them as well. And Manny Fernandez came up to him and said, "Hey guys," he said, "Yeah, you guys working tomorrow? Where you guys working at?" They said, yeah, we're booked tomorrow. We're in Sanford, North Carolina. He said, "Yeah, Stamford. I'm in Stamford too." Yeah. He said, "Stamford, where's that at again?" And they're going, I don't think you're going to be here, Manny, on this show. Like the guy that is kind of does the booking for it, he said, they only use like local guys, and like younger guys. It's kind of like a different promotion. They don't really use old school style guys. And he said, "No, I'm booked there." He said, "I'll see you tomorrow in Stamford." And Shane and Mike arrived at that show early, and they told me, said, "Hey, we want to give you the heads up. Like, I know we're still, we hadn't met. We're still new as far as like becoming friends and whatnot, and as far as establishing like these bonds of trust. But we want to give you a heads up. Like, we had nothing to do with this. Manny Fernandez was acting like he was booked on the show, and he acts like he's going to show up tonight. So if he does, I want you to know we're washing our hands clean of this. We didn't have anything to do with it. He was asking us about info. So we just want you to know we didn't have anything to do with it." And I was like, "Okay, well, thank you for the heads up."
And just context here, Manny Fernandez, NWA tag champ, former NWA tag champ, well-traveled veteran. He's been on TV. He's gone through every territory to this point. So for some listeners who are listening to this who don't know who Manny Fernandez was, you have to understand at the time, he's not in this guard of wrestlers that Matt and his friends are by any stretch of the imagination.
Correct. So I had heard about Manny Fernandez because we were doing indies pretty regularly at that point. And, the word on Manny Fernandez is that he would show up at indie shows always, and he would have a gun in his bag. He would be willing to hold promoters up for money. He was a bit of a carny. You know, he would do whatever it took to get a wee fee. He was going to make sure he could get paid in whatever capacity. But he was also a rough character. You know, he wasn't afraid to throw down and fight or threaten someone, whatever. So he was a character I really didn't want to be involved with. So you have a young ass Matt Hardy, you know, who's like, you know, 19 or 20 at this point, and it's the first Omega show we're having. And then I had been warned, so I had a little bit of preparation as far as that goes. Eventually, Manny Fernandez does show up at this first ever Omega show. And he has with him a man named Frankie Murdoch, who he trained apparently, who claimed to be like the nephew of Dick Murdoch. And he showed up, he said, yeah. He said, where's the booker? We're here to work. And then everybody's like, okay. And then here I come out. You know, obviously I'm dealing with this guy that is this well-known vet who's been in the business forever, who I've heard all these horror stories about in the locker room dealings over the years. So I come out and I face this guy and I go, hey, how are you? It's nice to see you, sir. My name's Matt. I'm the booker and I'm running the show here. I said, how can I help you? He said, yeah, I'm booked on the show. Where am I getting dressed? And I said, sir, I'm sorry. You're not booked on the show. There's absolutely a mistake. I'm so sorry. He said, no, I'm booked on the show. And he said, I was booked by, oh my God, what was that guy's name? He said, I was booked by Mr. Dean. There was another guy who did another indie promotion somewhere and they just threw a name up. No, I was booked by Mr. Dean. I'm on this show. And I said, no, I'm sorry, sir. You're not on the show. And I've noticed at this point, like Jason has got behind me and also Marty and my brother. Like there's a little bit of, you know, people who were coming over and getting behind me, like having my back. And I noticed like Shane and Mike Maverick had walked over to me and he said, yeah, Manny, you're not here. You're not here. He said, oh, no, I'm here. I was booked. Mr. Dean booked me for this. He said, and I am booked on this show. He said, I'm going to tell each and every one of you right now. He said, I am going to get paid. And then he got up in my face, you know, like inches from my face. He says, or somebody's kicked and it may be you. And then I remember, obviously, young Matt Hardy's like tore all the shit at this point. And I just remember going, I'm so sorry you feel that way, sir, but I don't have any money to pay you. Every bit of money I have for this budget has been spent and used. There's no money to be spent here. And at this point, both Shane and Mike Maverick had now like got over behind me. They hadn't tried to convince him. They're just like standing on my side, where you can tell there's like him and this guy, Frankie Murdoch, who he's with, who also wanted a payday. And he said they were supposed to work, had been for the show, where obviously they haven't. They were just showing up trying to bully their way on our show. And then I said, sorry, it's not going to happen. There's no money. There's no budget. So I'm sorry. You're not going to get paid. You're not going to be wrestling here. There's no room on the card. And then he said, okay, well, can I at least set up my gimmick table since there's been some sort of misunderstanding? You know, at least try to make a few bucks. And that's fine. And I said, that's fine. That's fine. I'm very happy to do that. Set up a gimmick table, go crazy. That's fine. And lo and behold, years down the road, after myself and my brother made it, we were in WWE. We ran into Manny Fernandez, who was a janitor at a La Quinta hotel in Charlotte. We'd flown in and we were checking in to stay there that night because we were going somewhere else in Tennessee or Virginia. We weren't coming home. And he said, hey, remember that time I tried to bully my way on your show and you stood your ground? He said, I was proud of you, kid. Which is so funny, man. Wow. Manny Fernandez, man. Yeah. There you have it.
You know, I'm hearing the story. I knew what the outcome was, but I'm hearing the story and there's almost a brotherhood element to it. Like hearing the part of that where your guys kind of stand behind you and they've got your back. That's a really special testament to the kind of relationship you had with these people at this time.
Yeah, it really was. It was a special testament to our crew, no doubt, because they had my back and it's like, you know, this was like the ultimate enemy trying to invade, you know, our youth movement and like our thing that we'd worked so hard to like, you know, build upon. And this was our first official Omega show, you know, and we didn't want anyone to ruin it. So like everybody had my back and like was, you know, standing up behind me. It really was. It was a true brotherhood at that time.
Now, this is a famous show for a lot of reasons, not just the Manny Fernandez incident, but also for something that has gone viral over the years. regarding Jeff.
Right.
You mentioned Thomas knew some people who could help get some like guardrails set up, give you a little more of a professional feel. And they weld these big metal guardrails that they're using to separate the crowd from the ringside area. And the first match is Jeff and Shannon Moore versus Foma and Black Skull.
Yes.
And Jeff tries to do an acai moonsault, and his opponents aren't entirely in the right place. They only catch part of him, and he bangs right off this guardrail with his shin. Now, if anyone has ever hurt their shin, you know that it's just the worst. But coming at the guardrail with the speed and the angle that Jeff did, he basically indents his shin. Right. Tell us what happens after that, because his night is not done.
Yeah. These guardrails were heavy duty. I mean, they were like solid steel, like 3 inches of solid steel. And they were heavy and they were strong and they were nice for being like a guardrail on a fence to keep the audience out and have a very definitive boundary between the audience and the wrestlers. But when Jeff hit this steel beam, like I said, it was so big and so thick. I mean, it bent automatically and he hit it so hard. And like we figured immediately he'd broke his leg, and we're like, he's going to have to go probably have emergency surgery. Like this was like so much impact and it bent it and moved it so much. And like it was right on his shin. It had to be excruciating. And the main event that night, which we had been building to for a while, was Matt Hardy, High Voltage Surge versus Will o' the Wisp for the title, for the championship. So that was like a big match. That was like our marquee match. That was, we kind of tried to sell all the people on, and we built
the
this
inaugural championship match.
Yeah, we had built this audience over the years, and like, oh my God, I don't think this is going to happen, but it did. And I remember Jeff got up, he finished the match. Once again, he's one tough son of a bitch. I'm sure people know this from watching his career the last 30 years, but he got up, he finished the match, and then he came back, and we're like, oh my God, like, what is the deal? And he said, I can go. He is a tough son of a gun, man, without a doubt. And he went out there and he's still like, I remember he charged at me and he took a backdrop, like full-fledged over the top rope. I don't even think he touched the ropes and went through a table on the floor and still did the spot. It's a big spot we talked about doing earlier in the night, even before he got hurt, but still hurt. He still did it, and he still went through and worked the match. We shortened it up just a little bit, but he still went out there and he went full gear.
We've talked a lot on this podcast in the first 5 episodes about how you just knew with Jeff there was something special about him. Did these audiences recognize that too at the time, even for as young as he was?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, there's just this, you're just drawn to Jeff. There's something about his personality. When you hear that term over and over, which someone can't really define, just that someone has it. I mean, Jeff, he has it. He has that quality. Just people gravitate towards him. They feel comfortable with him. They want to be close to him. They want to talk to him. He is someone they look at and they're like, oh my God, I want to understand what makes this guy tick. People are drawn to him. And it was no different then. And one of the biggest compliments I could give Jeff is because he started off being like, I was definitely a lot more outgoing, and I still am, I would say. Even like if it comes to like social media, stuff like that, Jeff's a very private person and I'm very much outgoing. In some ways, Jeff's an introvert. When he performs, though, he kind of cuts loose. I am definitely more outgoing than Jeff is in the big scheme of things and in life and whatnot. Obviously, that's kind of like why I handle the business end. I'm the one that deals with all the other people and I do the business aspect of everything. Jeff is just the rock star. He does the talent. But one thing I can say about Jeff, looking back to Omega, he had so much love for Will o' the Wisp. And because he was a little bit of an introvert and he was a little bit timid and shy in his own way, it's so funny. It was a little harder for Jeff to play different characters. But whenever he would put on that mask and it was like his identity was disguised and he was hidden, he was a totally different character. I mean, he turned into like what I feel like in my mind was a version of the Great Muta, which was a big inspiration for Will o' the Wisp. But the way Jeff performed when he knew he had the comfort of that mask on and he was Will o' the Wisp, it was amazing. It was a total 180. He totally changed personalities. He changed the way he walked. He changed the way he talked. He changed the way he wrestled. And it was really something that made me proud of Jeff. And it was a really special talent and ability he had. And I feel like that's why he had so much love for Will Wisp, ultimately even bringing it back, in his TNA Impact days.
So what's the reception to these first couple of shows that Omega is running here among the local community? What's the draw look like? Are people showing that there is a desire for this product?
Very much so. We get to the point where we were drawing on a regular like 300 or 400 people, and we had some shows that even we did 700 or 800.
Wow.
And then we had times where there were other schools that were contacting us to run events there. Like, we went to Wallace, North Carolina. We did shows in South Carolina near Tom's area. We ended up doing shows at East Wake High School, like around the Raleigh and Chapel Hill area where Shane Helms and Mike Howell were from as well. Mike Maverick was from, so like we were really starting to expand at this time. We always had our 2 major stops, which was Southern Pines and Sanford in the National Guard Armories. And then we also had the fair shows that we still ran. We always had those fair shows that there was just like an easy gig. They would give them to us. And that was like, our first bookings, out trying to do our own thing. So it was so cool that those stuck. And we always did those every single year. We would do 3 days at the fair. And those always ended up being special shows as well, because it was like our origin. It was our alpha for Omega.
That's really cool. And it's, again, a credit to the fact that the community was ready to invest into something and you recognize that there was a need for it. Now, one thing that Thomas is given a lot of credit for is that he had a pretty keen eye for talent. He obviously discovered you guys, and he also came into contact with the guy who was starting to make a little bit of a rippling himself, and that was Steve Corino, who's now, of course, with WWE on the training side of things.
Yes,
but well-traveled, has left an imprint on just about every major organization in some capacity, and alongside Steve, Joey Matthews, Christian York. Joey Matthews, of course, Joey Mercury. Christian York, someone who stepped away from wrestling and then came back and had a little bit of a second run. Lots of really strong young talent here. How important was bringing in guys like that in helping give legitimacy to your crew?
Steve Carano helped out a lot. I remember when we first started doing shows on our own, even back in the ECWF days, maybe even going into the NFWA version of Omega, we were so upset that we couldn't get the publicity that all the guys up north were getting. I remember Reckless Youth was like in the magazines all the time, ranked number 1 or DWI, and you'd see Ace Darling, you'd see Devin Storm, you'd see Steve Carano's name all the time. And we're like, damn it, why can't any of us guys in the South get the same type of, publication? Why can't we get any kind of press? What's going on here? I just saw recently Revival wrote a tweet where FDR, they wrote a tweet about how they would have been hired a lot earlier, but there was no press in the South. I mean, but these guys were doing it in, 2009, 2010, brother, you should have tried doing it in the early 90s and saw how tough it was before there was any internet. Like, we were doing like some killer stuff and we didn't get any press. All the press was around the New Jersey, New York area, Philadelphia. Those guys got loaded, with all the press. So I feel like Steve Carino coming and being a part of Omega and joining us helped us with that, because he was someone that they actively followed and they actively regarded him as like someone who was in, the mix when it came to pro wrestling. So that was great. And we were able to use that. He seems so different from like a character or like from his, found his roots in wrestling. He was so different. It was very easy to go along and make them like outsiders who invaded Omega. And he was actually running a promotion called NWA 2000 at that point, and they actually invaded. And it was during that time that like the NWO thing was starting to happen. So we were able to kind of get some juice off that. So it was cool to have like a interpromotional angle.
You quite literally did a spray paint on Thomas's back with a green spray paint. But talking about Steve here, I feel like he is probably one of the most underappreciated workers of his era. I've watched a lot of Steve Carino over the years, and just a great mind for the industry. And it seems like Omega was an opportunity that he viewed as a chance to help mold some talent around him and elevate them into bigger stars.
Yeah. And I do agree. Steve, very underappreciated. He has a brilliant mind for pro wrestling, and the stuff he did at ECW as the king of old school was just genius. It was brilliant. And I loved working with Steve. And I especially loved working with Steve because it gave me like, a different perspective on pro wrestling, because he was trained by someone totally different, where we weren't trained, or we didn't come from the same backgrounds. We had different mindsets, but we were able to kind of like work together and combine our thought process. And I think for us, it was a great learning experience as well, being around Steve and other guys who had been trained in very different ways.
So Omega's picking up some momentum here. You've got a lot of talent. Another infamous spot from Omega makes its rounds around. Again, there's no internet here, so eventually these tapes make their way into the trade and eventually online. And that's from our boy Shane Helms here and the Serial Thrillers. And it involves you and a military truck. Take me through this, Matt.
Yes, we were doing our, annual or monthly, not annual, or monthly angle or bi-monthly angle and spot show in Sanford, North Carolina at the National Guard Armory. And there was a deal where the military was on some sort of high alert and they had to have all this equipment in the venues. And I remember we came in to set up our ring and get ready for the show. And like, there's this huge transfer truck trailer in there, which weighed tons and tons and tons. And we're like, hey, are you guys going to move this? They said, no, we can't. It's just policy. We said, yeah, but we've put it on a deposit and we've rented the venue for this day. So sorry, this is what we have. And then just started brainstorming. I was like, well, what if we use it and make it part of the set in some capacity? You know how, WWF or WCW, they would like have all this stuff and they would have a special set on a pay-per-view. It's like, we'll view it as that. It's like a pay-per-view and this is going to be part of our set. And on top of being part of the set in the background behind the commentators and whatnot, we figured, well, maybe we can use it as a spot. And I remember Shane walking in, and the main event that night, we were going into a Hardy Boys versus Serial Thrillers angle coming up. I was wrestling Mike Maverick in the main event, and Shane was going to be in his corner. And obviously they were the heels. There was going to be some dastardly tactics in that match. And I was like, well, we can figure out something where we can have Shane jump off and put me through a table. I said, this would be really cool if he's down for it. And I remember he walks in the building, dragging his bag, and go, hey man, are you cool jumping off that and putting me through a table? And he's like, sure. And he just picks his bag, rolls right in the room. And it was just said, just like that. And looking back, it was pretty crazy. And I think the clip became so famous because it was much further down than he thought it was. And as he jumped, he overshot the table a little bit and he like kind of landed on his face and like scorpioned kind of across his body. He bent over backwards and it really looked like, it was a little rough on me, but I'm sure it killed him. It murdered him. And that clip went viral. Something that was cool about all the Omega, VHS tapes. And when people were recording it, whenever they started spreading around, like that DVD Death Valley Driver board became like a big thing, which Omega became notoriously famous on. I remember I've heard from Tony Khan that he saw some of that, some of the Omega stuff back in the day.
I'm just shocked to hear that. Let me tell you.
I'm sure, which he had heard that, like the tape trading and whatnot. And that was just something. Ted Hobgood helped us out with that a lot as well. He got tons of footage from Japan, videotapes he would give us. And he did a lot of tape trading of the Omega stuff as well, which kind of got the word out and spread the word about it. And I feel like that's how it became like such a cult favorite over time because of all that tape trading. And they're like, oh my God, there are all these guys in the South that are doing all this insane, crazy stuff. And they're doing these killer matches. And now we're just hearing about it now. Like, how come this wasn't on TV or how come we didn't hear about it? Just before the internet, it was just hard to get that kind of buzz. And it was hard to get your product out there. That is one of the greatest gifts of the internet, is that it allows that.
Now, this is May 1998 that this happens. And that's important because Omega hasn't even been around a full year yet. But you're getting somewhat of a reputation in the area. You mentioned you're drawing good crowds.
Yeah.
Talking tape trading. There's this kind of cult following. And at this show, you tell Thomas, hey, we're signing a full-time deal with the WWF. What were those emotions like in having to tell him something that I'm sure is going to radically affect how he does business going forward? This is your baby. At the same time, you're a draw for this. I have to imagine that's kind of bittersweet.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was very strange because we had signed at that point, and we just didn't know. They said just keep doing what you're doing as of right now. We'll tell you when something is going to be different. Like if you're going to start on the road full time or whatever. And they kind of promised us towards the end of '97. They had definitely shown interest that they wanted to sign. My brother and I know they were very interested in Jason Arndt as well. So whenever we'd signed and whenever we told Thomas, we've signed with them, as of now, just the word is like, just keep doing what you're doing, until we buzz you and something changes, whatever. And I mean, for us, we had achieved another dream. It was our dream to be wrestlers. We get to wrestle in Omega, and I got to do my own shows and book and, play every single role in a wrestling promotion, which was kind of a dream of mine too. And it was so great to do it there. But also we were getting to go to the big dance. So that was extremely exciting. With it being bittersweet, yeah, there was going to be a part of us that was going to hate leaving Omega, if that's what it comes down to. I mean, at that point, we just didn't know. We said, who knows, maybe we'll just stay under contract and we'll never, ever get called up, whatever. So yeah, it was a tad bittersweet, but we were also very excited because it felt like we were fulfilling another dream of ours by signing with WWE, and we were hoping we would just get the opportunity to become a big deal on that roster as well.
Now, WWE does eventually let you still work these Omega shows for the short term, at least over the course of the next year or so, maybe a little less than a year. But that kind of gives you an opportunity to flex your creative muscle, and you're going to get thrown into different opportunities for stories. You were supposed to have a big blow off match with the Thrillers based on that spot that we just mentioned, but Mike Maverick ends up falling off a roof and breaks both of his arms. I don't mean to laugh at what happened, but this is such like an indie thing that happens, and that's why it makes me chuckle. So Jason, Joey Abs actually subs in for him. You guys win the title. So here you're WWF bound, but you guys take the titles. Thomas tells us that he feels that this is like one of the best indie matches of the 1990s. It garnered a little bit of a reputation in the tape trade. Any memories about that match?
Yeah, I'm sure that I feel like that's the final match between us and the Serial Thrillers once Mike healed up. Mike Maverick he broke his arms on a shoot job, brother, which he was doing roofing, and he fell through a faulty roof, and he ended up breaking both arms. The match where Jason substituted, we were kind of building an angle anyway where Jason was going to turn heel and he was going to end up being like the big heel champion. So even though him and we were close friends, and he was saying over and over that he didn't trust my brother, and he was alluding that he thought my brother was Willow, we had a very integral angle there. And I love doing that. Like I was doing very, it's like I really needed a TV show to like try and get over all these angles I was trying to pull off, because we were doing a thing where Jason was kind of slowly turning heel on me because we had been a tag team, and he was almost jealous of the Hardy Boys' success. And he was telling me my brother's bad news because really my brother is also Will the Wisp. But we kind of made all these things work together. We ended up doing a deal where myself and my brother won the titles. Jason got mad at me. He snapped and beat up everybody. I had one final blow-off match with Will the Wisp, which was a 2 out of 3 falls match. And if he loses, he has to unmask. And he unmasked. It ended up being my brother. And then we realized we were the champions together. And then the match that you're talking about that was talked about that was so highly regarded as this great indie match was our last Omega match. And it was in East Wake, which was the high school that Shane went to. One of our big, like over 1,000 people were there, a huge crowd. And it started off where Jeff came out as Willow and took the mask off again and went full-fledged heel. And then I came out and joined him. So the Hardy Boys, which we were selling ourselves as sellouts because we had joined the great Vince McMahon and the great machine of the WWE, and like, fuck all you little people, this little nickel and dime Omega shit isn't cutting anymore. We're going big, brother. We're properties of Titan Sports now. And that match we had the crowd was so involved in it. And then at the very finish where Shane and Mike Maverick win the tag team titles from the Hardy Boys, who now had portrayed sellouts all throughout the night, and it was our last hurrah before leaving to go work WWE full time, which was pretty ironic because 99 is obviously the year. A couple months after that is when things really broke out for us, and we became runaway stars in WWE. But that match was a lot of fun. And that match it was crazy how popular and beloved and famous that match became. And there was just a lot of hype in it too, because it was our final match, I think.
Well, I want to say too, I was referring to the other match. Thomas put that over as well as one of the best indie matches he's ever seen. But this is the one that gets all the steam. And I have to imagine there was probably a sense of finality for you. And at the same time, knowing that this would probably be the last time you'd all be on a show together, it had to tug at the heartstrings a little bit.
It did. I know that night after the show ended, the whole crew stuck around, and we all went and we all ate together that night. And it was very much a brotherhood like night, because we did that. There was some sense of finality, just like you said. And we knew it'd probably be the last time that we were all together in that locker room, in that same environment. And we'd been through so much, between everybody having my back for the Manny Fernandez scenario, or everybody having one another's back when we had to deal with Gent Salutes and the ring was held hostage, or everybody having our back when we did that very first show, that ECWF show, which I was super stressed out in, which was just one of those stressful days and events of my lifetime. We'd all lived through so much, and we really did. We were a brotherhood through and through, and it really showed.
And for context's sake, you're really only about a year and a half or so into Omega's existence here. And the Hardys are off to become big time stars. Shannon Moore is starting to get real looks at WCW, and eventually he would find his way to WWE Impact. Christian York and Joey Matthews are going to end up coming in around the time or just before WWE buys WCW. These talent are taking this stage that you helped build, and in turn are cashing in and signing contracts off of that. How rewarding was that for you?
It was amazing. I mean, it really was. I mean, you had, myself and Jeff, we were the first two to sign with WWE. Jason Arndt ended up signing with WWE, who were going to be known as Joy Abs with the Mean Street Posse. Shane Helms and Shannon Moore, they signed with WCW at that time through Chris Canyon. They were about to sign Joy Mercury and Christian York, but I actually got them signed with WWE, and they went to the developmental territory in Memphis, and they worked out there for a while. Christian ended up kind of fizzling out a little bit after they first got released, and he came back, as you said, for that second run. But everybody knows that Joy Matthews obviously went on to find really great success as Joy Mercury in the industry. And then you had Steve Corino, who was obviously at ECW, Mike Maverick and Otto Schwanz, Mike Maverick being Shane Helms' original partner. Those two, along with Marty Garner, went to ECW, and they started working on their television product as the Dups. And they were like one of their regular acts. They were on other TVs and whatnot. And then I was able to get a look at the Dups, and they ended up signing, WWE signed Mike Maverick and Otto Schwanz, but they didn't sign Marty. Just him being the smaller guy, he was almost kind of like the manager of those guys. So we had 12 guys. Caprice Coleman is another guy that ended up signing with the Ring of Honor. Was an Omega original. We trained him. He was one of the first students in our training school, and we had trained him from the jump. I mean, there were a lot of guys that ended up signing deals out of that. And you almost get to say that Trevor Goodell was part of that, because he was always working and doing stuff. He was running the gimmick tables, and he was a little kid running around, like my son Maxwell's age at that juncture, and now he's obviously signed a contract with WWE and working one of the main players on NXT.
We're going to have an episode on him later in the year. And you may be saying to yourself, well, Matt's just rattling off all these names. I want to hear more about them. The beauty of this podcast is it is a long form storytelling podcast. We're going to have a chance to dive much more in on all of these guys over the course of our run here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. And Omega itself is, in order to tell those stories about those guys, I feel like the audience kind of needs to have a baseline understanding of the platform that was Omega, a promotion that really only ran for about 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, it did. I mean, it was the most well-known time of its existence were those 2 years that it ran. But I mean, obviously going back to like 93, 92, it was really in existence that whole while. It wasn't the known name, but the time where it had all the notoriety were those 2 years. And that's really when we built up all the momentum, and we were doing so many different shows, and it was such a regular thing for us. And like, it really was. I mean, for me, I was making my living between going to college. I was making my living off selling sponsorships and running Omega, as well as raking pine straw, which the Hardy compound is full of pine trees. I would rake and sell pine straws, and I had taught myself how to sew. I broke out my mom's old sewing machine, dusted it off, taught myself how to sew, and I would make guys gears. All those tights you saw the Hardy Boys wear when they originally debuted in WWE, that had the hope and faith and the flower tights and whatnot. All that stuff I made, so that was my living, and I was making a living being a pro wrestler at a young age while going to college. So that was pretty cool. That's all I wanted to do. And we worked hard enough that we were rewarded by signing a deal with WWE. And, most people know that. The rest of all that's history. But you're talking about all these characters that work for Omega, these names we were rattling off. We had so many guys that went to be in prominent positions for big companies. I know the dirt on all these guys, so there's a lot of great podcasts we can do going forward on all these different names.
And that's why we kind of needed to get a little of a baseline here to set all of those stories up. Omega starts to lose some steam towards the end of 99. Everyone's getting signed, or there's different commitments. Steve Corino's moved back up to Philadelphia. You start to see the writing on the wall. You're not working Omega shows really at this time because the Hardy Boys are becoming really freaking famous, and they're about to have this No Mercy ladder match. And around the time of the No Mercy ladder match, that's kind of when Omega more or less shuts shop here. What's your feeling at that time?
I mean, that was obviously sad. I mean, there's always going to be a very special place in my heart for Omega. I know Thomas took on all the responsibilities, and that I loved working with him. He was a great person to work with because he would like invest, and he had money. He was financially set at that time in his life. And with me and Thomas would say like, I would like to see some of this on the show, and then I would kind of make it happen. And then he always trusted me. Every booking decision, he never questioned. I would explain it to him, and every angle I ever decided to do, he always dug, and he always was fully committed. He would dive in with both feet and have my back, and all the guys would. I mean, it was a great team effort. And like at that point, as far as being the leader, it was very cool because like everybody had my back and everybody trusted me. So that was a huge responsibility that I took very seriously.
Who is the unsung hero of Omega?
I mean, I think the unsung hero was probably a Jeff Hardy. Jason Arndt was also very special at that point, but I mean, Jeff is just a special talent, as we all know, but he worked every show twice. Every single show. Not all of us did. Most of us did not, but he worked every show twice because he had so much love and passion for Wolverine, Jeff Hardy, and Willow. So every show he worked twice. And those are two characters that were like both extremely over everywhere we went. So, I got to say the unsung hero was Jeff Hardy. Jeff couldn't care less about like taking a paper and pen and like writing down a card or like trying to figure out angles. He's just like, just tell me what to do. And let me paint my picture. That's what he wants to do. Tell me what to do and let me draw my art. I'll make it a masterpiece. I promise. And he really does. He just like, he'll take whatever you give him and he will make it into something special.
In the mid 2000s, the Uncommon Passion DVD is made. How did that come about? And what did that do for the legacy of Omega?
Omega grew that large cult following, as we'd said, from like tape trading and whatnot. Then obviously so many people saw the video clips, like once the internet became bigger and once stuff could be uploaded online, there were different things. So like this documentary was an idea that Thomas had. It was his idea initially. And he's like, hey, I'd like to put this together and kind of like honor the memory of Omega. And it's when I was released from WWE for a few weeks. I think we said we did it, but we did it afterwards. And I just told WWE, I said, I just did it while I was released for a few weeks, even though it was a little later in 2005. Right. Mm-hmm. So like, it was very cool to get this together. And if you notice, everybody is on it in some capacity, with the exception of Shane Helms, because he was under contract the whole while. I don't think he'd ever had a point where he could do any of that because he'd always been under contract. So they got footage from Jeff from like 2003, 2004. You didn't have updated footage on him because he was working again soon at that time. But like I was able to get in there and do some current interviews. And obviously I feel like I almost had to be in it because I was like I was just such a cornerstone of Omega, especially with all the, with all the booking and with the, as far as the promoting of the shows and whatnot, and like, booking from a talent aspect, booking from a show aspect. I had a lot of commitments and it was stressful in some ways, but I don't even think back then, being young, I didn't even look at it as stressful. I just looked at it as something I enjoyed. And I was so passionate about it. It's one of those things, what is the old expression? Like, if you do a job you love, you never work one day in life. I mean, that's how pro wrestling has been for me. If I'm doing something I love, then I never work a single day in my life. So I'm very fortunate. I've been able to do that for so long.
We'll do an episode down the line on this, but Omega does get a relaunch in 2013. Was that something deep down that you knew you'd always want to take a shot at if you ever got a chance?
I don't know. Maybe I probably did have a feeling like, when I'm retired or whatever, I would love to, now that I have all this knowledge and experience and
big money here.
Yeah. And have really seen the ups and downs of pro wrestling. I think I would have a much better idea of what I'm doing. Then maybe I would do it. But, at that point, I was still working very regular, and that was headed up by Shane Helms. And I gave him all my blessings. And I said, yeah, just if you build the shows around, my schedule and my brother's schedule, who was at TNA Impact at that time, I was like, yeah, we'd be happy to do all the shows we can, because we're both kind of on freelance contracts. So those were great. They were, as far as now thinking about it, like doing it down the road, I don't know, man, like with my kids and everything, it would be such a huge responsibility, such a huge undertaking. I don't know if I would do it right now, unless like there was this like outline all set up where all these other people were doing all the responsibilities. That would be a huge burden to bear. Right now, I just want to like enjoy my life and enjoy my kids.
Well, who's to say in 10, 12 years, Surge 2 versus Will-O-the-Wisp 2 in Little Barty or Maxwell or Wolfgang could happen one day. Who's to say?
Yeah.
Never know.
Exactly.
We like connecting, though, the past to the effect that it has today here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. And I mentioned it at the beginning. I feel like the success of Omega really lends some credence to the value of local indies in small communities. How do you think it helped shape the perception of what a ma and pa indie can be?
I mean, I think it was hugely impactful. One, the style that we did was like no other style anywhere in the world at that time, especially in the early 90s. Like, we were doing an X Division style, which ultimately became like the style in pro wrestling. It's what AEW does now. It's what a lot of the WWE matches do, which is like go, 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 go. It's not big brooding guys working a lot of rest holds. That's not what we did. It was go, go, go. So I feel like from that standpoint, we were kind of trendsetters, and I've taken a lot of pride in that, that Matt and Jeff Hardy are both trendsetters in many capacities. So I feel like my booking in Omega and the way I want everyone to work. Also, if you watch an AEW television show now, and I feel like AEW is the most on the pulse of the current pro wrestling style. I feel like the opening match is always the barn burner and the closing match is always the barn burner. I always wanted our first match to be a great match and the last match to be a great match. I had that mindset and mentality many, many years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever. And the tape trading that happened and the way so many people are just aware of the moves that I did, and Will-O-the-Wisp and Surge and High Voltage and, Venom and the angles, the people that have seen that clip of Shane Helms diving off that transfer truck bed onto me and smashing me through that table. That clip is like a famous, iconic clip when it comes to Omega. I mean, that's pretty cool. And these things that you think about, like so many casual wrestling fans have like seen this stuff or aware of this stuff. And when we're just doing it, it's just like, oh, well, let's go and have a great show in front of these few hundred people that are here in this local town of Sanford, North Carolina, which no one knows about in the world. This stuff's happening, and it was captured on film, and then that clip becomes famous and iconic. I mean, that's pretty powerful. And it just shows that there are people who can have dreams and aspirations and chase these dreams and aspirations. And even if they don't know fully what they're doing, if they're very passionate about what they're doing, it can lead to something, because obviously it led to something for us. I mean, that is at our core, it is the nucleus of what made all those talents get signed. We were all very like-minded. We were all there working for the greater good. We wanted the whole show to be great from top to bottom. And there was no jealousy. There was no envy. Everybody had each other's backs. I mean, and that's very obvious when you look at those things like the whole Manny Fernandez incident. And everybody had my back.
That never happens in local indies, where everyone has that camaraderie and is looking out for each other, because at that stage, everyone wants to get signed. Everyone wants to take it to that next level.
And that was our whole mentality, is we wanted everyone to succeed always. And on top of just, we were all close friends as well as being, fellow wrestlers. We were all like close, legitimate friends, and all had great relationships. So it is really special in that capacity. And it shows you what a group of talented individuals coming together, working for the one common goal can do. I mean, it showed so much success, and so many people went on to be signed out of a promotion. It's hard to look and find a grassroots indie promotion that had 11 or 12 people go on to be on global television. It's crazy. It's insane to think that actually happened, and it really did.
Out of rural North Kakalaki.
Yeah.
And it's pretty incredible. One thing that stood out to me in the DVD was Steve said that he felt if Omega really had like the right funding behind it at the time, it could have been a viable number 4 promotion in the United States, which is such a bold statement. We're talking WWE, WCW, ECW. He felt that Omega, whereas ECW was the alternative to WWE and WCW, he felt Omega was even more of an alternative to ECW, and that it could have blazed its own trail with the right funding. Is that Matt fact, or is that Matt fiction?
Oh, I mean, that's a hell of a compliment. I just watched that again recently too, as you know, and man, just that statement was a crazy compliment. And I don't know. I mean, if we had been funded, if we would have had a network and a system where we could have financially been okay, if we would have had like a machine behind what we were doing, maybe. I mean, once again, like having a machine behind you, having someone who can finance your show and make sure you have all these different shows and all these venues and make sure the roster is covered. If you had it, maybe. I don't know. We were doing some special stuff, and who knows if we would have had a machine behind us, maybe we could have been the 4th big one.
Well, let's close out this podcast by answering some fan questions, Matt. It is
Sounds good.
#AskMatt. Lots of questions here about Omega. Alicia asks, what was your favorite Omega match and why?
I would say my favorite overall Omega match would be myself and my brother versus Serial Thrillers in East Wake, where they won the Omega Tag Team Championships for us. It was just so much fun. There was such an incredible energy in the venue. We were in their hometown, in their neck of the woods, and we were already playing the big shot WWE guys, and just everything fell into place. It was just a really special and magical night. And another match that I really loved as well was when we did the 2 out of 3 falls match with myself and Will the Wisp, where he ended up unmasking, because when Jeff took off his mask and exposed himself as Jeff Hardy to the Omega crowd that night, when he went outside, he cried. He was like so emotional about things. And it's because that character, he had so much love for that character. And I feel like it was probably like, it was almost like a bereavement for Willow. Like if it is truly over and I'm not doing it anymore, like I'm missing a part of me. Maybe like, when you hear someone who plays like an iconic character on a television show, and when they know that show's over and that character's been killed off or whatever, and they're sad about it, they have to kind of like disconnect. I feel like Jeff had to disconnect from the Willow persona that night.
We've seen so many of the clips. Derek asked, did Omega have a local TV deal?
We did not have a local TV deal, but we recorded everything, and I know we recorded a couple of things like in a very professional vein, and we made VHS tapes and later DVDs out of those events. But no, we did not have a TV deal. We weren't making that kind of money yet.
Oh, you know what else is not making money? 2 hours here. 2 hours. 2 hours of this. 2 hours,
rapping.
Okay?
We're rapping, Rebby. We're rapping. I promise.
Why don't you hold up? Don't hold up your phone. Hold up some money. Rapping. You're going to be taking 2 hours. I don't want to see your phone.
We're rapping. I promise. I promise. I'm keeping us under 2 hours, Matt. Yeah, you have it. I don't want to be on the wrong side of Mrs. Hardy. I promise you that. A couple more questions here. Felipe, what's one move or spot you guys used to do on the Omega days you'd wish to bring back? I really like this. Some of the moves you guys used to do, like the double monkey flips or your springboard moonsault or Jeff's Phoenix splash.
Some of the moves I would like to bring back. I mean, I would love to do the springboard moonsault. Physically, I am not a young man anymore. I can't. I'm not as flexible as I used to be. Probably my favorite move I would bring back would be where I charge at my opponent and go to clothesline him. He's by the apron and he back drops me into the ropes, and I springboard back down and DDT him on the floor. That was one of my favorite moves.
All right, and I'm terrified of Mrs. Hardy, so that's going to be the end of our Ask Matts. But I was just going to put over Mrs. Hardy too, and Rebby's Twitch streams. What do we got coming up with the House Hardy and Twitch this week, Matt?
I'm sure we're going to keep you up to date on all things that are happening here on the Hardy compound, and there's always something going on here at the Hardy compound. So yeah, the Twitch streams, they're always fun, and whatever is current in society and pro wrestling and pop culture, we always touch on it.
Holy moly. And you can check out the House Hardy on Twitch. It's can't miss content. I promise you that. We appreciate you guys tuning in here every week on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. And next week, Matt, we are going to be taking a dive into big money, Matt. We keep talking about the Italian Stallion. We're going to learn the story behind it and how it's connected to AEW today. And rumor has it we might even get some run-ins potentially for that episode.
Outstanding.
I love the sound of it, Matt. I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to try not to shake in my boots for the next few hours here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. Matt, anything else you'd like to add this week? I had such a fun time going through Omega with you.
I did too. Yeah. Omega was a very special time in my life and in my career. And I just want to thank everyone that has really had a special shout out or revisited the past to put over Omega. I am greatly appreciative of you because Omega was my baby back in the day, and I'm so happy it became so beloved.
Make sure you check out the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. 5-star reviews, share it, rate it. We want to hear what you got to think. Tweet at us at Matt Hardy Pod. The words have been spoken. My self-confidence is broken. We'll see you next time here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy.
Deletion! My skin's dying.